So, what brought you to Canada in the first place? Well, actually, I have been asked this kind of questions many times, but of course, I had a lot of answer, but most of my true answer is during my life. But this time, I'm going to break the ice. I'm gonna tell you what brought me to Canada. Well, my sister came here in 1997 and eventually she decided to bring me over here in Canada, and it took me or her to process the papers maybe 7 years, waited 7 to 5 years. I was waiting in order for me to come to Canada. And I know many of you think that I married an old man. That's why I came to Canada, because of course, a lot of people assume that once you're a Filipina, you come to Canada because you married an old man. And a lot of my videos here are just a skit. After all, this is a social media. Sometimes it's just for fun, and most of the time, 70% of the time, a lot of things you see here is basically fake. And also, I mentioned in the past that it was the old man who brought me here. That's actually true as well. It was my sister and an older guy who brought me here. Okay, so now you know what brought me to Canada. How did you respond to the cold coming from a place as warm as the Philippines? Well, to tell you a story, I came here in Canada in the month of October. And yes, it was already starting to feel cold. The month of October was a fall season and I saw that the leaves were falling, and I keep telling my sister, why are the trees dead? And my sister was like, no, they're not dead. They're just sleeping. They're hibernating because they're getting ready for the winter. And I was really fascinated with nature here in Canada because I've never experienced that in the Philippines. And the first time I've experienced a cold, I was trying to be brave that, oh my God, I'm in Canada now. I'm so brave. I'm from the Philippines. It's so hot in there and I can definitely survive the cold here because I wanted to touch the snow. I wanted to experience the cold weather in Canada. And I remember the time my sister kept telling me, try to keep yourself warm because you're gonna get sick. And I was like, oh, I'll be fine, I'll be fine. And of course, I get sick because I did not listen. And I cannot really blame myself because I was young, I was so excited, I was so fascinated with everything I see in front of me. And eventually, I got used to the cold. And later in life, I've ended up moving or relocating to the east side of Canada. It's in Ontario, and it's crazy because it's even colder. I've lived in Ontario for 4 years, and oh boy, it's so different from being in east than west. Being in Ontario, it feels like I wanted to go back to the west because at least the weather out west is much better than Ontario. But eventually, I realized that if you're someone from a tropical country, warm country, and you ended up coming to a place where it's super cold, at first you would end up liking it or getting excited about it. But at some point, there was a point that I got really depressed because my body was really longing for warm weather and warm feeling. And even though sometimes we experience summertime here in Canada or warm weather, it's not the same as the Philippines. And that's why my body was just changing in a way that I want to go back to the Philippines. Until now, my body get affected every time there's winter time, cold season, and my body just wants to feel the warm weather because, again, I'm an island girl. So I always prefer the warm weather, but once in a while, I want to go back to the Philippines to experience the weather again. But it's just a challenge because if you can't afford, then you can't afford. And as for now, try to enjoy the cold. Try to enjoy being happy because there's nothing I can do about that, right? So yeah, that's the story of me being here in a cold place.